I'm 66, and as I've looked at life and as I have watched life happen, I've become convinced that there are two challenges that you and I have in life. And if we can accept this challenge and meet this challenge, face it well, life will be very fulfilling to us and it'll be very rewarding to the people around us. And because my topic is purpose today, I want to talk to you about these two challenges. The first challenge is for us to find ourselves. And we find ourselves when we discover our purpose. Nothing is better than for a person created by God in His image with a plan for his or her life to find themselves, find that purpose. It's what makes you solid. It's what makes you secure. It's your mooring. It keeps you just exactly where you need to be so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. To discover your purpose, to find yourself. What a wonderful thing. That's what our subject is about today. But there's a second challenge. Once we find our purpose, discover why we're here, there's a second challenge that we have, that we face, and that is to lose ourselves. We're to find ourselves. Isn't it interesting to lose ourselves? And we lose ourselves when our purpose becomes bigger than us. To find a purpose, how important. But then to take that purpose and place it in a position with people that has eternal factors involved is to lose yourself and to go to another whole level of life and another level of living. Many people never do either in their life. They never find themselves. They never lose themselves. Some people find themselves, but they never lose themselves. Very few people find themselves and lose themselves. And the aim of this lesson today is to help us know how to discover our purpose and then how to place that purpose in a position that is so much bigger than us that we can literally lose ourselves in the process. Now, this teaching of finding and losing is given to us by Jesus in Mark chapter 8. Then Jesus called the crowd and his disciples to him. If you want to come to me, he told them, you must forget yourself, carry your cross and follow me. For if you want to save your life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for me and the gospel, you will save it. Jesus introduces us to the fact in this lesson, in this teaching, that we can save our life if we lose our life. That if we give ourselves to him, to a greater cause, we'll literally find it and lose it. He teaches us literally and gives us the foundation of how to do this. So the first question we have to ask ourselves this morning is how do we find ourselves? That's challenge number one. And we find ourselves when we discover our purpose. This morning as I was preparing my heart for our time together in teaching, I was in my hotel here, near here. And I went down early in the lobby and I got in a little place kind of in an area where I could just kind of be by myself. And I began to pour my heart out over what I was going to teach. And I was in the passage in Jeremiah 29, one of my favorite scripture verses. And just really hang with me here on this. God says, I know the thoughts and plans that I have for you. Thoughts and plans for welfare and peace, not for evil, to give you hope in your final income. And as I sat in the lobby this morning and I began to see these words again, as I've read them many, many times, I've quoted them many times, and it hit me that God has thoughts and plans for me. And he not only has thoughts and plans for me, he has thoughts and plans for you. Let me put it this way, let me contextualize this. When you woke up this morning, God was thinking about you. Yeah, he was. And when he created you in his image, he had plans for you. You're not an accident. We're not here because we just kind of happened to be at the end of an explosion. That we are here because we are divinely placed here with the thoughts of God. And then it hit me because, you know, when somebody's kind of like important to me and they say something like, John, they'll text me or something, they say, boy, John, I've been thinking about you. And you say, oh, how nice. Oh, they've been thinking about me. And how wonderful it is, especially if somebody maybe that you look up to, they say, I believe in you. I just want you to know I believe in you. I just want you to know, I just believe in you. And then it hit me, God's texting you this morning. He's texting you and he said, I just want you to know, I've been thinking about you. And I've not only been thinking about you, but I got plans for you. You talk about building your self-image. You talk about all of a sudden beginning to realize how person of a worth and how valuable you are to God in his sight. He's been thinking about you. He's got plans for you. I want you to look at your neighbor right now and say to them, give them a big old smile and say, hey, God's thinking about you. Go ahead and tell them that, huh? God's thinking about you. Hey, and look at the person in your sibling and say to them with a big smile, and God has plans for you. Go ahead and tell them he's got plans for you. And now look at him and say, and I wish you would figure it out. Huh? Oh, come on. I sure hope today you can pick this up. All right, the question is then, how do we find our purpose? If he has a purpose for us, if he has plans for us, if he's been thinking about us, how do we find it? There are two questions we have to ask ourselves to find our purpose in life. And question number one is, what am I passionate about? Passion often is linked with purpose. What I love to do is often what I should do. We have been created within us the capacity to have things that we enjoy greatly. And a lot of times there is a definite relationship between what I am in love with and what I should be doing. We are created and wired in such a way that passion and purpose many times comes together. And passion is the great energizer. Once you have passion, you have energy. Once you find your passion, you find your purpose, there is something energetic about it. You have never known a person who was passionate that lacked energy. We talk about high energy people, we talk about low energy people. There's no such thing as like low energy people or high energy people. If you have high energy, you have passion. If you have low energy, you don't have any passion. You know, some people, they're already dead. They haven't made it official yet. You just look at them. I just want to walk around and do the committal, let them watch and observe the whole process. But passion gives us a great amount of energy. And when we have that passion, there's something about how we love what we're doing and we enjoy what we're doing. And passion energizes us. Now, when I say passion and purpose are linked, that is usually the case. It is not always the case. It is possible to be passionate about something that you're not good at. It's possible to be passionate about something that you're not gifted in. Hello? Let me explain. Have you ever watched the tryouts at an American Idol? They grab that mic. Man, aren't they passionate? I mean, they are belting out badness. But I mean, they're belting it out. I mean, they are sincere. They are loving it. They just are they are passionately bad. And every set in America, people are grabbing remotes and hitting mute, and oh dear God, shut them up. Help them. Help me. Help us all. Heal them. Heal me. Strike me with deafness. Do something. Strike them with speechlessness. Oh, go on. Just do it. Do it. Maybe this doesn't. Have you ever thought about this? Every time I see something like this, I always have a question. Every time whenever I see somebody that's just really passionate about something that they're not good at, I just always ask myself, where are their friends? Come on, talk to me a moment, huh? Where are their friends? I mean, don't you think you should just sit down at the table and get a bottle of water and say, my name is John, and I'm your friend. I just want you to know you can't sing. So it's possible It's possible to be passionate about something that you're not good at. But I know this, if you're passionate, that it will increase your energy. And the second thing that I've discovered about passion is it sets us apart. It sets us above the crowd. A person with passion always stands out. The world is so full of apathy. It's so full of average. It's so full of whatever. That once you have passion and once you have a sense of energy in your life, it just sets you apart. It distinguishes you. It already gives you what I would call a head start in success in life. I can still remember as a very young person, graduated from college, Margaret and I got married 2 weeks later. 2 weeks after that, we went to our first church in southern Indiana, a little place called Hillham. You've not been to Hillham. You've never heard of Hillham. You wouldn't want to go to Hillham. If you went to Hillham, you wouldn't know you were at Hillham. 11 houses, 2 garages, 1 country store, a little old church building, over 100 years old, roof sagged, walls bowed. The week before I went there, the church split. What really messed me up is I agreed with the people who left. It was kind of like, there go my people. There go my people. There go my people. The first Sunday in my new little church, we had 3 people. First Sunday. 2 of them were Margaret and me. Old lady who lived by the church named Maud was the third. Maud, Margaret, and me. That was it. First Sunday. But I was passionate. I loved that little community. I loved that little church. I loved those farmers. And when my college friends would come out to visit Margaret and me for the weekend, when they would pull their car up to our little house, I'd jump out of the house real quick and I'd jump in their car and say, no, before you come to the house, I got to show you my church. I got to show you my church. And I'd take them a half mile down the road to the little country church, and we'd pull in that little gravel parking lot that had 30, you could put 30 cars in probably at best. And I would go and I'd open up the front door of the church. I said, this is my church. This is my church. And the good news is once you open the front door, they saw the church. All of it. It was there. But I was passionate. And I just loved those people, and I just loved my ministry, and I just loved my calling. And we just had a handful of people in the beginning, but we just started working hard. And I could remember I'd been there maybe 6-7 months, and I thought, boy, we need to have a big day. And so in the summer, one Sunday morning, I just got up and I said, on the first Sunday of October, we're going to have 300 people in this church. And as soon as I said it, I thought to myself, wow, whoa, ooh, I wasn't planning on that. And I looked at the people, and they weren't planning on it either. I mean, they looked at me, and 300 people. These people some of these farmers never saw 300 people. Get the picture. I mean, they came up afterwards and said, preacher, we love your passion, but 300 people, that's beyond us. We can't do that. I said, will you help me? They said, well, of course we'll help you. It's just too big of a number. But I mean, we just started asking people to come to church. I mean, and in our neighborhood, you had to ask them all. I mean, it's not like you get some of them, you got to get them all. You understand? You got to get them all. And so we just asked people, and by September rolled around, we'd ask people so many times that when people would see me coming or any of our members coming, they just hold up their hands and they say, I'm coming. Don't ask anymore. I'm coming. I'm going to be there. Finally, the Sunday came, and we were ready. We opened up all the windows. It was a nice day. We had places on the outside because we could do 100 in the inside. We cleaned up the basement. We rented a little house beside, put some wiring over there for sound, and it was as good as a country could be back in 35, 40 years ago. And so here we are, and the people came. Oh, we had a crowd. I mean, it was wonderful. Right before I got to preach, our lady leader stood up and said, this is the biggest number we've ever had. This is our record attendance. People are just off the walls, happy, clappy, cheering. He said, we had 299 today. I'm sitting there. I didn't know the number until I heard it. And first thing I asked myself as a pastor is, why am I the only pastor in America that has honest ushers? Where is the creativity? Now, I'll tell you what passion will do for you. I'm just a kid. I'm 22. I stood right up and I said, what's our goal? They said 300. I said, how do we have? They said 299. I said, we're one short. And that won't do. I'm not preaching till we have 300. So Penny, you come up and lead worship. I'm going to go out. I'm going to find the 300th person. I'm going to bring them here. When we get 300, I'm preaching. I walked off that little platform and I started going down that little aisleway, and those farmers stood up and they were clapping and they were cheering and patting me on the back and said, "Go get him, preacher, go get him, go get him." And I was so pumped until I walked outside. And I thought, now what am I going to do? I got 299 people waiting on me. I looked across the street at the gas station. There was Benny Harris, Sandy Burton. Sandy owned the gas station. Neither one of them ever went to church. Walked across the street. Of course, everybody knew we were trying for 300. And Sandy said, "Boy, preacher, you got a lot of people over there. Did you get your 300? I said, "Not yet. We have 299. We're one short." Got a question to ask you. Which one of you? Which one of you will walk across the street and go to church with me this morning? Because whichever one of you goes across the street, you'll help us hit our 300, and you'll be the hero. And when people are having chicken dinner and are all across the farms today, they'll all be talking about, "You're the one that made it happen." Which one of the two of you wants to be the hero? Folks, you got to ask the questions right. Sandy and Glenn Harris looked at each other, and they both looked at me, and they said, "Look, we both want to be the hero." And he put a close sign on his gas station. I put one on one side, one on the other side. I walked back across that street. I walked right down. I mean, when I walked in that church building, those farmers, I mean, they were looking, buddy. And they started clapping, throwing their hymn books in the air. I mean, I went down the front row, kicked two members off, set the two of them right down there. I taught. And I'm just a kid. Can't sleep that night. All I want to do is rehearse in my mind this incredible day of ministry for me. It was a big day for me. I know it doesn't sound big to you, but when you're a kid and it's the best you've ever done, it's big. And so I can't sleep, and I'm just going over and over, and I'm so excited, I'm so happy. And all of a sudden hit me in the middle of the night while I'm not sleeping. The only reason that we ever hit 300 was passion. Passion put us over the edge. Passion set us apart. Passion made the difference. Can I tell you something? When you're passionate about something, it isn't reasonable, but you do it anyway. When you're passionate about something, it's not possible, but you do it anyway. When you're passionate about something, passion will take you where nothing else will ever take you. It'll give you that decided edge. It'll help you to stand out. Wow. Now, let me just say something about purpose and dreams and finding your purpose. I wrote a book a few years ago called Put Your Dream to the Test. And basically, it's questions you need to ask yourself to make sure if your dream is a valid dream. And I would go around and I would teach off of this Put Your Dreams to the Test lesson. And all of a sudden, it hit me that there were a lot of people that didn't have their own dream. I had assumed when I wrote the book that everybody had a dream. I've had a dream. And all of a sudden I realized there were people coming to me and said, "Well, I don't have a dream for myself." And I could see that they were a little lost, and all of a sudden it hit me. And this is what I want you to understand. You may not have your own big dream for you, but it is probably because God has someone for you that he wants you to join and help them fulfill their dream. You see, this is a biblical principle. Not everybody has their own purpose and own personal dream. Look at the fishermen down at the Sea of Galilee when Jesus walked into their life and said, "Hey guys, follow me. I'm going to make you fishers of men." What did he do? When he walked into their life, he gave them a dream that they didn't have. He gave them a cause that they didn't have. He gave them a person to hang around with that they didn't have. And let me tell you something. Sometimes God has people literally designed to come along and complement each other so that the dream can be filled. Teamwork makes the dream work. I've seen it happen many, many times. I can tell you right now, for many of you, it's happened in this church. You found this church, you found this place of grace, this oasis, this place of vision, this place that is making a difference, this dynamic place. And all of a sudden you started pouring your gifts in here, your spiritual gifts, your financial gifts. You just kind of lost yourself and just dove into this congregation. And now you're seeing amazing things happening. And it's an absolute fact that some of you, Your place, your purpose, your dream is to come alongside, complement, add value, and do something for someone that they cannot do for themselves. Every great person is great because people have come around and supported that dream and supported that vision. Look at Jonathan and David in the Old Testament. Jonathan rightfully was going to be the next king. His father Saul was the king. He was the rightful heir. But when he saw David, he said, no, David is the anointed one. I'm going to back up. I'm not going to be the king of Israel. I'm going to support David. I'm going to let him be the king of Israel. I'm going to be a king maker. And Jonathan understood that whole possibility of putting his purpose into the purpose of someone else. In my second church in Lancaster, Ohio, I can still remember the church was growing very fast. Good things were happening. One day I had an appointment with a member of the church that wasn't an outstanding member, would not be termed a leader, would not be one of the people kind of that makes it happen. His name was Brent, and he wanted to see me, and so we sat down, and I said, Brent, I said, what can I do for you? And he said, Pastor, he said, you nothing. He said, there's something I can do for you. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So I kind of said, okay, what do you got? He said, I'm watching the church grow, and he said, I'm watching wonderful things happen in this church. And he said, I recognize I'm not the top leader. I recognize that there are other people kind of that are more VIP than me, and I understand that. And he said, I just want you to know, I've been asking God, how can I help you? How can I add value to you? And he said, I know you're busy. And he said, I came across a God idea last week. I said, what is it, Brett? He said, I know you're busy. And he said, I know you have to do errands and chores like anyone else. And I thought, what would happen if I would give you every Thursday afternoon and do your errands for you? He said, I don't work on Thursday. I get done at noon, and if I could come by the office and you could have somebody just give me, you got dry clean you want to do, you want your car clean, whatever you want to do. He said, you just make a list and let me just give you my Thursday afternoons. And for the next 7 years, Brent Johnson would come by the office around noon and Thursday, and he would pick up all this stuff, and he just began to lift a load. And I remember that day looking at this precious friend and hugging him. He became a very close friend, a very intimate friend of mine, because he understood that his purpose was to help a bigger purpose, and his dream was to add value to another dream. And I'm here to tell you, there are a whole bunch of you out there. You're adding value to the dream of this church. You're adding value to the dream of somebody that you're working with. You're making a difference. So your purpose may not be just for personal use. It may be for corporate use or collective use. It may be bigger than you. Does that make sense? Passion. But the second question we ask ourselves is not only what am I passionate about, but what are my strengths? What am I good at? What is my spiritual giftedness? Because when God created you, he gave you gifts, spiritual strengths, to enable you to find and fulfill your purpose. And here's what I know, that when you find your spiritual gift, you'll be good at it. You really will be. It'll be just what you do well. It'll fit. It'll be natural. It'll be easy. You'll have an opportunity to use it. When you find your spiritual gift, God's going to give you the opportunity to use it. He's not going to give you a gift and then not let you have the opportunity to use it for others. You'll be energized by it. When you find your spiritual gift, all of a sudden it'll give you an energy that you just didn't. I mean, you'll just love it. You'll just love it. You won't wear out. Can I tell you something? When you're in the area of your weaknesses, you get tired, don't you? But when you're in the area of your strengths, you're energized. I have a degree in counseling, so when I started the ministry, I started counseling. The good news is I had a degree. The bad news is I wasn't any good. And I know you're thinking I'm modest, but I'm not modest. I wasn't any good. Trust me. People would come into me for counseling, and I'm kind of a bottom line person. They'd start talking to me about their problem, and I'd very quickly figure out what it was. And I got my legal pad, and I'm already giving them a kind of a 1, 2, 3 way to fix their problem. And so I'd kind of write it down for them, and I'd tear the sheet off and hand it to them and say, be healed. And they come back the next month with another problem. I thought, didn't we fix you last month? And so, well, I got another problem. And so I listened to that when I'd give them 2 or 3 points and tear off the page and be healed. And they kept coming back, and I kept getting worn out. And I'd come home, I'd be tired. I said, Mark, I don't have any energy. I'm just dealing with problems and weaknesses. And then I'd get irritable, and I'd get impatient. And then sometimes they'd be so discouraged to say, I just would like to jump off the bridge. And I found myself offering to drive them to the bridge. That's not a good thing for a counselor to do. And then sometimes I'd take them to where the bridge was, and I'd be so discouraged by the time I got to the bridge, I'd just say, could we hold hands and do kumbaya and jump off together? You know what I mean? Whee! Oh, well, here we go. No energy. It was my weakness. I wasn't dealing out of my strengths. And one day I realized that when I counseled with people, I worked with their weaknesses, and I wasn't good at that. But when I equipped people, I worked with their strengths. And all of a sudden it was like, literally within a matter of a couple of days, I went from being worn out because I was working with weaknesses to be absolutely energized because I started working with people's strengths and started equipping them. And all of a sudden I began to understand what happens when you play to your strength zone, when you play in the areas where you're good at. And I would also say when you find your spiritual gifts, you'll have capacity to develop them. You'll really get good. You're good now, but once you start developing and working your spiritual gifts, you really get good. I was excited when Chris was talking earlier and sharing with those in the legacy area, people with the gift of giving. And would encourage you, if you got that gift, there's a meeting tonight at Grace to come. I know what he's doing. He's going to help you with the gift of giving to take that gift that is a wonderful gift, and he's going to help you to absolutely highlight it because you have capacity there that you've never understood or never tapped. I would encourage you, if that's where your gift is, don't miss that meeting tonight. So now that's how we find our purpose, by our passion and by our giftedness. So then how do we lose ourselves? We lose ourselves because we lose ourselves when we give our purpose to something bigger than us. When all of a sudden we say, okay, I've got to give myself to something bigger than me. Jesus said it. What he said, you'll lose your life. He said, you'll lose your life when you follow me and when you give it for the sake of the gospel. When you take your purpose and position it in something bigger than you, he said, all of a sudden you'll begin to lose yourself. So for your notes, when you're bigger than your purpose, when we're bigger than our purpose, we have a career. I deal in the marketplace all the time in leadership. I deal all the time with people that have careers, and most of them, they're bigger than their career. They've got a career, but it's always looking out for me and how am I going to advance and how am I going to achieve? And they're bigger than their purpose, and so they have a career. But can I tell you something? When your purpose is bigger than you, you have a calling. And losing yourself is when you get a calling. And it's a calling because now it's no longer just you, it's more than you. It's bigger than you. In my own little journey, I've had 4 steps to this, what I would call losing myself with my purpose journey. It started out with, I want to make a difference. As a young person, I just wanted to make a difference, just like every one of you. Every one of you in this auditorium today, I can promise you, if I could come in and sit beside you and you and I could have a conversation, every one of you would say, John, I'd like to make a difference in my life. I'd like to do something that really, really matters. That's how my journey began. I want to make a difference. And then one day I realized I had to go beyond that. There was another step, and I went from, I want to make a difference, to step 2. I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference. This is now, I'm going to begin to lose myself. I'm going to begin to lose myself because now I'm focusing on doing something in my life that has eternal value. I'm going to do something in my life that is bigger than me, that lives beyond me, that can never be satisfied or fulfilled or achieved by me. I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference. I'm now beginning to lose myself. And then I went to step 3. I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference with people who make a difference. Because I realized all of a sudden that the big things in life, the great things in life, take a team. One is too small of a number to achieve greatness. And if you're going to do something amazing, it's going to be because you do it with other people. And again, that's what makes this congregation so vibrant. This is what makes this congregation so incredibly relevant today. You're doing it together. You're loving together, praying together, worshiping together, ministering together. You're not diving alone. You're diving together I want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference with people that make a difference. And then because of my age at 66, because time is important and every day I'm counting my days, I have to count my days. There's a fourth part for me. I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference with people that make a difference at a time when it makes a difference. Got to make it count. I don't get many more do-it-overs. Got to make sure that I do it right on the front end. For several years, I go to the Indianapolis 500. Tony George, who owned all that and was over that race, read all my books. And he would have me come in on race day and talk to the drivers, the owners, and then we'd go up to his suite and we'd watch the Indianapolis 500. We were having lunch before the race one day, and Tony looked at me across the table and he said, "John, what's the difference between success and significance?" I said, "Oh, Tony, success is when I add value to myself. And significance is when I add value to others." And you lose yourself not in success. You find yourself in success. You lose yourself in significance. It's when we begin to add value to others that we begin to lose ourselves, because now the cause is greater. Our why, our purpose, our why is bigger than us. And when our why is bigger than us, when you find your why, you'll find your way. Everything changes at that time. I shared with you earlier that I'm 66, so people ask me all the time, they say, "John, when are you going to retire?" And I tell them I'm not going to retire. And they look at me and say, "Well, why not? You can." Of course I can. I'm old enough to retire. I have enough money to retire. I've been very blessed. I'm very grateful. I mean, I've written 25 million books and sold them. Just do the math. I'm going to be okay financially. Well then, John, let me ask you, why don't you retire? I'm not going to retire because I've lost my way. My purpose is greater than me. I have a calling, not a career. A career you end, a career you kind of phase out. And there's all kinds of things you do with the career, but with the calling, I mean, what I do is what I love to do, and I don't want to retire. I don't have any desire to retire. I didn't come to Birmingham because I wanted another plane trip. I didn't come to Birmingham because I wanted to see Birmingham. I've seen Birmingham. I came to Birmingham because I wanted to see you. And I wanted to see you because I thought I had a message perhaps that could help you find your purpose and maybe spark something within you that would begin to get you on your way to finding and losing your purpose. That's why I came. I'm having the time of my life. I tweeted my wife, Margaret, before I went out. I said, "Oh, this is what I was born for. I was born for this. And if I was born for this, why would I want to stop?" I've decided that I'm going to live until I die. And I've decided I'm not going to get those two confused. Because a lot of people do. So some people say, "When are you going to retire?" I tell you when I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire when I die. When I die, I am retiring. I'm going to make it official. When I'm dead, I am writing no more books. I'm not writing any more books, I kid you not. And when I'm dead, I don't care how many times Chris asks me, when I'm dead, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming, but I'm going to tell you, till I die, I think I'll live. And I think I'll live because I have a passion for what I do, and I have a purpose for what I do, and I've found my purpose, and I've lost my purpose, and I've lost my purpose in you. Every time you put yourself into someone else, everything changes. I wish my dad were here today. He's still in great health. He's 92. He's amazing. You say, "What do you mean he's amazing?" He's amazing. He's the greatest man I know. A few years ago, my mother died. They'd been married for 66 years. When she died, even though he was in good health, my brother and sister and I, we said, "Dad, let's get you in a kind of retirement community so that you have support around you, people around you." And they were just building one close to his home, and so we said, "Okay." And so we took him over and got him all ready and the whole process. And one day I was having lunch with him. He said, "Son," he said, "you know that when they opened the retirement community, they've said I could be the first one to move in." I said, "Dad, that's great." I said, "Why do you want to be the first one to move in?" "Well," he said, "Son, there's a bunch of old people going to come here." And he said, "Those old people," he said, "they're nervous and they're insecure and they've never been away from home." And he said, they need somebody here to encourage them. And he said, I want to be the first one. I want to be right at the front door. So when they come into the community, I can shake their hand and say, my name's Melvin Maxwell. I just want you to know I'm your friend, and it's going to be okay, and we're going to have a good time here. He said, they need somebody to help them. That's what he did. And that's what he does. That's what he's doing. In fact, while I'm teaching here, he's become the chaplain of that place. They didn't vote him in. He just raised his hand and elected himself. Found a nice big empty kind of hall there and meeting room in their facility, and asked him if he could have church there. And so he had a first service and he filled it up. And so he got a second service and he's got it full now. Recently we were having lunch. He said, son, he said, we're full. He said, we got a real problem. We got a real challenge. He said, we're full in the first service. We're full in the second service. He said, I'm looking into satellite now. I'm looking into satellite. He's 92 and he's looking into satellite. He's 92. He's looking into satellite. He's found his purpose. He's lost in his purpose. It's absolutely incredible. I have a coaching company. And we had met several hundred of our coaches for training a few weeks ago, and I was having dinner with him. Before I went over to Orlando for the coaching conference, I said, Dad, on Sunday I'm going to speak. And I said, would you mind coming over and speaking a little bit? And he said, well, son, he said, I'd love to come over and speak to those coaches. He said, they need some encouragement. But he said, I've got 2 services. I said, well, Dad, I'll tell you what, I'll get the limo driver to pick you up, and we'll have an early one. We'll have you speak at 8 o'clock, and you can be done at 8:30, and you can get back because your first service is at 9, and your next service is at 11. He said, he said, that'll be wonderful. And he said, he looked at Betty, he just got him a brand new kind of wife, and boy, he's just so happy with her, and she's an 82-year-old chick, okay? And he's so happy with her, and he says, oh, honey, he said, it's going to be wonderful. He says, I'll get to do 3 services on Sunday. He's 92. He's 92. He's found his purpose. And that's what I want for you. That's why I came here. I came because this morning when you woke up, God had thoughts about you. Yes, he did. This morning when you woke up, he said, I got a plan for them. I got a plan. Today, God's thinking about you. Today, God has a plan for you. You are special, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. God is thinking about you and has a plan for you right now.
In this time together, I want to talk to you about how to become a world-class leader. Several years ago, I was traveling internationally speaking, and I was in Thailand, and I was answering questions to the news reporter when I landed in that country. And they asked me what it was like to be the world's #1 leadership guru. And I looked at them and I said, well, I don't know. And it's there that they told me that it had just been announced that I was the #1 leadership guru in the world. In fact, they knew it before I knew it. I didn't even know that this had happened. And so that day I realized that, wow, if I'm the nation's or the world's #1 leadership guru, this has been a good journey for me. So I asked myself, well, how did I achieve that? If I really am, then how did I get to that position? How did I become the world's #1 leadership guru? Well, I'm going to talk to you about how to do this. I'm going to talk to you right now about how you can become a world-class leader. So these are my practical steps to you as I, your friend, John Maxwell, mentor you. Number 1, start with yourself. Don't start with the world. Don't even start with your team. Start with yourself. It's kind of like this. The #1 leadership challenge I have is not leading others. The #1 leadership challenge I have is leading me. You see, it's easy for me to tell you what to do, but for me to do it myself, now that's a whole different story. That's a whole different level. And so I don't want you to miss this because it's so important for me that you start by leading yourself. In other words, you start by being the example for your team because your team is going to be like you. So if you develop good leadership qualities, if you develop good leadership practices in your life, guess what? Your team will follow. I've learned that it's easier to tell other people what to do than to do it myself. I've learned that I'm my number one leadership challenge. So when John Maxwell, who's become the world's number one leadership guru, where does he start? Not with the world, not with even my team. I start with myself. I make sure that I'm the example I want my team to see so I can truly say to them, follow me. The second step in becoming a world-class leader is to start for the right reasons. Often I'll talk to young leaders and they say, well, I want to be a leader. And I always ask them the question, why do you want to be a leader? And I'm always interested in their answer. Sometimes people will say, well, I want to become a leader because I want to be in control and I want to be first and I want people to look up to me. And when they begin to talk about selfish reasons for wanting to be a leader, well, I'll make more money or I'll have a higher position or I'll be the boss, I know immediately that they're in trouble because you don't lead for what it benefits you. The only reason to lead is to benefit others. Leadership is all about other people. It's not about you. It's not about me. And so what I've realized is that the people who are successful in the long run leading is because they became a leader to add value to the people around them. Again, that's the question. When I meet with presidents of countries, in fact, as I'm teaching you today, just in a couple days, I'll be in another country and I'll be meeting with the president. In fact, I'll be talking to Congress in that country. I'll be talking to the Supreme Court. I'll be talking to many leaders. I've been going to be on nationwide television. And when I'm alone with like the president of a country and it's just the two of us, I always look at them and I ask them this question, since you're the president of the country, since you're the leader of the country, who's getting the most benefit, your people or you? You see, the only reason to lead is to give the people the benefit. The only reason for you and me to lead is to add value to others. That is essential. You don't want to miss it. So how do you become a world-class leader? Start with yourself. Number 2, start for the right reason to add value to people. Number 3, just start small. I love this. Mass movements don't begin with a mass. They begin with a few people who just are passionate and committed to make a difference in the people's lives and those around them. And so when you start for the right reason, you're starting to benefit again and help others and make a difference in their life. When you start small, you're realizing that if you can't lead a few, you'll never be able to lead many. So when sometimes people say, well, I want to lead a big team, I say, well, honestly, can you lead a small team? Can you lead 2 or 3? If you can lead 2 or 3, maybe you can lead 20 or 30. Maybe at a time you can lead 200 or 300. Maybe someday 2,000 or 3,000. But you start small. You don't start big. Mother Teresa was asked one time, how do you feed the world? I love her answer. She said, start with 1. How true, how simple, but how helpful. Mother Teresa said, start with 1. If you can feed 1 well, guess what? You can go with 2 and then with 3. And as I say that, when people look at me as a world-class leader, literally 50 years ago, I started with 3 people. Just 3. And one of them was me and 2 others. I started small, but it's okay. If you can lead small well, You can lead medium well. Someday you'll be able to lead big well, but start small. The fourth thing I want to talk to you about, and this is so essential to becoming a world-class leader, is that you need to be consistent. You don't become a world-class leader by being inconsistent. You don't become a world-class leader by quitting. It's every day doing the right thing, the main thing. It's doing those everyday essentials that will make you very successful in your life. And believe me, at 74, I can tell you this is a fact. Consistency compounds. If you will keep doing the right thing every day, someday you're going to reap a huge return. It's kind of like, maybe to illustrate it, if there was this big boulder, big rock, and I wanted to break it, and I had like a sledgehammer, a big hammer to pound that rock. When I started, I would know that the first time I hit that sledgehammer on that rock, that there was not going to be anything that would be shown as making progress with that rock. It wouldn't crack. It would just be there. And so I keep pounding the rock. I keep pounding the rock. And for many times, I'm not seeing any progress. I'm not seeing any kind of positive results of all that pounding. But, if I just keep pounding the rock, you know what happens? Eventually, all of a sudden, the rock cracks and then it breaks. Now, the day I hit that sledgehammer on that rock and it broke, would everybody say, oh my gosh, that was the magic hit. That one right there, that was the one that broke the rock. No. Every hit was magic. Maybe hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of hits. I don't know. But every hit was magic because it was going towards the specific goal of breaking that rock. What I want you to do is this. Consistency compounds. Recently, they told me that I've written more leadership material than any person that has ever lived in the history of the world. Now, if that's true, people would ask, John, how have you written more leadership material than any person that's ever lived in the history of the world? It's very simple. I write every day. Every day, I'm writing. That compounds. After tens of thousands of days in my life, I'm now the number one leadership author as far as written material that the world has ever known. But how did I get there? Consistency. I write my books one word at a time. You live your life one day at a time, but be consistent. If you'll do those four things, you'll be a world-class leader. And that's the truth. And I came to the conclusion that I want to talk to you about intentional living. Now, about 7 years ago, I wrote a book called Intentional Living. And it's a book that's really helped people understand how to maximize their life. And that's what I kind of want to do with you. I want to talk to you about how you and I need to live intentionally every day, because it's going to really help us to do better and be more successful. And perhaps the way I ought to begin this teaching is by sharing with you a visual that I give many times when I help people and add value to them. And the visual is just very simple. It's just my arm up in the air like this. And the reason I do that is because some of the best advice I've ever heard and received in my own life is the advice I'm going to pass on to you right now, and that is everything worthwhile is uphill. Everything. If you've got a great relationship, it's all uphill. Margaret and I have been married for 52 years. It's been an incredible life together, but it's uphill all the way. I mean, you've got to work at your marriage. You got to work in your business relationships. It's all work. And there seems to be just a wrong mindset in the fact that things should be easy, things should be quick, things should come naturally. And life doesn't work that way. But you see, I have to understand that it's uphill. And the reason that I'm talking about that now is because if you're going to go uphill, you have to be intentional. That's just a fact in life. I mean, nobody accidentally went uphill. You never talk to somebody that was successful and ask them how they got to the top of the mountain and have them look at you and say, oh my gosh, I have no idea. I just woke up and here I am. No, that doesn't happen. We know that. You have to be intentional to go uphill, and everything worthwhile is uphill. Everything. Now, the challenge that we have is that we all have what I would call, uphill hopes, okay? This is where our dreams are. This is where we're the very best that we possibly could be. We all have uphill hopes, but we also have downhill habits. And the two just don't mix. They never have, they never will. And so my teaching on intentional living to you today is to really help us to understand that if we live in an intentional life, one that is purposeful, one that is willful, if we live an intentional life, life really is very rewarding to us. But we have to be intentional. If you're going downhill, it can be automatic. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to work at it. You don't have to be intentional. You can just kind of let things happen. But when you let things happen, it's all downhill. I remember having a conversation one time with my friend John Cotter, a Harvard great professor, but writer, has written a lot of good stuff on change, et cetera. And we were having a lunch together. And we were talking about intentional living. And I'll never forget, John looked at me and he said, most people accept their life. They don't lead their life. And as soon as he said that to me, I thought how true that is. We accept our life and then expect it to turn out really good, instead of lead or be intentional with our life and understand that we're going to have to every day purposefully be the person we want to be and do the things that we really need to do. It's called ACT, ACT. The letter A stands for apply. What am I going to apply? So as I go through this teaching today with you, and as you're taking notes, there are going to be things I'm going to say that you say, wow, that I need to apply that to my life. Maybe already with the uphill thought. And it's, did you have to be intentional to go uphill? Maybe you say, well, I've got to apply that to my life. But if there's something that I say that you need to apply to your life, just by your notes, just put a letter A. That stands for apply. Okay, I've got to go do something about that. The letter C in that word act means change. And what that means is that a lot of times when I'm listening to somebody that can help me with insights in leadership and life, all of a sudden I'll say, wow, you know what? I need to change something. I don't know. Maybe when I was talking about the downhill habits, immediately thought of a downhill habit that's keeping you from really climbing the way you want to climb. And so if there's something that I talk about today, then you say, I need to change that in my life. Just put the letter C right beside that little note that you're making, because these are reminders. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. If I say something today that when you hear it, you say, oh my gosh, I've got to teach that to someone else, that maybe somebody on my team, they need to know this, or I need to pass this on. This is too good to keep to myself. Then put the letter T. Now, you see what we're doing. We're kind of marking up the notes with an A, which means apply, C, which means change, or a T, which means I need to teach. So what I want you to do when you're done with this teaching today, this is kind of like a month exercise for you. I want you to go back to your A's. You may have, 5 or 6 A's, things that you need to apply that you learned out of this lesson today. And so I want you to put all the A's together, all the C's, the things you need to change, the T's, all the things you want to teach someone else. Put them in groups, okay? A's, C's, and T's. Now, when you're finished with that, do one more thing for me. Prioritize those A's. As you look at the maybe 5 things you need to apply, which is the most important to you right now? So put that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you get prioritize the C's, prioritize the T's. Now we've got a game plan, and this is what really excites me, because when we have a game plan of application, things really start to improve in our lives. And the game plan is very simple. I would encourage you to take the number 1 A, the number 1 C, and the number 1 T, whatever those 3 things are. And every day for the next month, do those three things. The one thing that you need to apply, that you learned out of the lesson, make sure that every day you take action on that. The thing that you need to change, make sure every day that you are conscious, intentional, okay? So I'm going to change this. Make sure that every day, whatever you're going to teach, that you pass that on to someone else, that you teach it. Now you have a real good game plan for application as we go through the lesson. And I gave it to you at the beginning of the lesson so that as you go, you can be marking your A for apply, C for change, and T for teach. Okay, I think we're ready to go, okay?
For the next 3 days, I would like to talk about success and really what is it and how do you and I define it. So today I want to talk to you about the first part of success, what it really is. You see, if I could sit down with you right now and I would ask you what success is to you, with literally hundreds of thousands of people watching Minute with Maxwell, we would get hundreds of different answers because success could be very subjective. And yet at the same time, as I've studied success all of my life, I think that you will agree in these next 3 lessons that I really can define success that would be compatible with who you are and what you believe. So the first thought that I want to give you about success is this. I think success is knowing my purpose in life. I think that's where it begins for you. I think it begins for me. In other words, until we know why we are here, how can we know if we're successful? It's almost like the mission that we have, the calling that we have, the giftedness that we have demands us to kind of know what our purpose is. Now, you find your purpose. I find my purpose by asking, what's my passion and what am I good at? What are my strengths? Those are the 2 ways that you and I find our purpose in life. I would encourage you to do that. I'll tell you, you can always find your purpose by going to your strengths and your giftedness and abilities, because that's how God created you. That's how He created me. He created us for a purpose and gave us the gifts to accomplish it. The passion part, it's mostly accurate. Probably 80% of the time, what you're passionate about is what probably you're gifted in, and also probably what you would be your purpose. But it's not quite as exacting as strength. But that's where it starts. I think success is when you and I know why we are here. It's been said that there are 2 great days in a person's life: the day they were born and the day they discovered why. That discovering why, that's the purpose. That's the first part of success.
One of the things that Joel has partnered with us on is really coaching leaders in the C-suite and the executive space in a program that we call Executive Circle. And I've had the privilege to ride shotgun with him and listen and to the content of the conversation. And this topic today is something that he is dealing with and gets more questions, especially in his one-on-one coaching of those Executive Circle members. And it's just saying, hey, I'm overwhelmed in my job. There's not enough hours in a day. And where should I be spending my time? Where do I get the most efficiency out of my day? And you just share with them transparently. I've heard you say, I've done it wrong. I did it wrong for a lot of years. It cost me, it was a high price. And I spent 20 hours a day working. That's not the right way to go about it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about where Joel is and what he believes is how great leaders spend their time. Talk just as we introduce, talk a little bit about your heart for this message and what you're hearing from the leaders that you're coaching.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the introduction. And it really is because I've done it wrong through some of my career. And I've made some big mistakes, both personally and professionally. And we'll get to that. And I feel a huge burden to share what I've learned with other leaders, because it is lonely. And it's really, really hard work, and there's no playbook out there.
Right.
And I've done just a ton of learning myself, reading, talking to other CEOs, and have come up with this 5-part model. And I know a lot of things are in steps of 5, but
I love it.
But it ended up being so relevant that we made the entire Executive Circle curriculum around this. So Chris mentioned Executive Circle. It's 12 months of curriculum, but it's built around these 5 things because how you spend your time is everything.
Yeah.
And so it's just very near and dear to my heart.
That's good.
Well, let's start, number 1, I love it. It says, share the vision and strategy of your department or organization. Sounds simple, but that's pretty profound.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm just going to give all 5 at a really,
do
just
that.
so they know what's coming.
That's great.
Because you wouldn't intuitively start here necessarily, but it's share the vision. Where are we headed? The second thing is share the values of the company. The third, and live out the values of the company.
Yeah.
The third is to manage the business. And the fourth is to make others successful. And the fifth thing is to keep yourself healthy. So that's what we're going to just walk through at a very high level. But sharing the vision is not just something that the CEO should do. It really, I don't care if you're managing one person or even managing your home, everyone should kind of share the vision of where we're headed. And I just mean directionally, what is the department's vision, what's the company's vision, and more importantly, how is every employee, they need to see their role in that.
Yeah.
And when that happens, they come alive.
Yeah.
And I think great visions, to that point, great visions go beyond the financials. It needs to be something that people can really connect to. It makes the world a better place. For instance, at Hershen Enterprises, which we run Dolly Parton's parks, it was make memories worth repeating for family. Or at SeaWorld, it was come to the park and help save the planet. And so everything they were doing was try to make the world a better place. And I just think that's really, really important, because once you do that, people know what the plan is and they know what their role is within it.
I kind of was brought up that you share the vision at the January kickoff meeting, and that's enough because they got it, and you realize
Hear from it again.
they don't got it.
Excuse me.
The continuous sharing. What's your view on how often do you do that?
You know, I do like at a big level, like high level, the CEO doing it at least annually like that. But then as you unpeel the onion, every strategy has a set of plans and tactics that every employee is assigned, and then there's key result areas for each of those tactics, right? It's like you got to hit a sales goal. How are you exactly going to do that? How many calls you're going to make? What's your close rate? Whatever. That should be reviewed weekly, I think. And so that when you get down to the frontline level, everyone should know what their role is rolling up to that macro
Why
strategy.
does what I do matter in the vision that we're doing
Exactly,
here?
exactly.
That's great. Well, the second one that you mentioned, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about is live the values of your department or organization. And when you first introduced it, you said, the values, and you said, no, live them out, right?
Yeah.
Live the values. Talk about the importance of that as a leader, spending their time living out their values.
Well, most companies that I've seen have what I would call, actually Cheryl Batchelor, CEO of Popeyes, used to say, we have a plaque problem, because people would put their values on a plaque. And that's it, right? Not a teeth plaque.
Oh, that's where I was going. I thought you were going to talk about the dentist.
Pull
I
out
was
the
like,
dental
where are we going with
floss.
this? Yeah, that's right.
No. It's so critical that every organization defines exactly what their values are. And you mentioned my book, and I appreciate that, but that's what Love Works is all about. Every company has do goals, and they should have be goals.
I love that.
The do goals are the financials. It's what we have to do to hit our targets. It's our sales, our margin. A lot of companies, other than putting on a plaque, don't focus on their be goals. And I think that's why cultures tend to be weak. And to have a strong culture, we need to define the values, your do and your be, and then everyone needs to try to live up to it. Now, everybody makes mistakes. Every day, even with Love Works, I probably made a mistake a day on the values. The key is, again, it's a vision.
Yeah.
How do we want to behave? How do we want our leaders to behave? And are people holding you accountable? And I knew the culture was really working when people would come into my office and say, you lost your patience, or you weren't very kind in this circumstance. And then the culture's working.
that's
So
good.
that's what I mean by living it out.
Catching people living the values, and what are those behaviors? I love that.
It's very hard to do
I
sometimes.
recall, I read your book when it first came out, and about be and do was really, I had not thought about it that way. And I started sharing that on coaching calls. It really resonates with people that we're always talking about do, but we're not ever really, nobody ever goes the further step about be. And
And
it
I
made a
think
difference.
someday I want to write a book about what what it takes to really take those values and integrate it into the culture, because there's several steps to do that. You can't just talk about it. You have to teach it. You have to reinforce it. You have to promote it. And just only about 10% of the companies do that. So it's really important. If you want to be a great leader, this will really differentiate you.
So we're talking about what leaders should do with their time, and this one seems kind of obvious: manage the business. But go take that a little deeper for us.
It is obvious, Perry, but the key point is, most leaders, they spend almost all their time there. So even though it's the third one, most people don't share the vision. They don't focus on living out the values, and they don't get to the last two either. So I think the key point to talk about in managing the business is, how do we get out of some of the day-to-day and delegate more? And for me, it took me forever to learn this. In fact, when I was in the auto industry, I led as an expert. I started on the plant floor. I actually owned and ran car dealerships. So I had been everywhere, and I led as an expert much more autocratically. But when I went into the theme park business as a CEO, I was forced to be very Socratic and ask a ton of questions. But what I found is that allowed me to delegate more, and I could focus on the other areas of great leadership. And for people on the call or who are listening here to the podcast, if they struggle with delegation, I have one question it's really the best question I've ever been taught in delegating is, and the chairman taught me this at Hershon Enterprises: what is the worst thing that can happen, and can you live with it? What's the worst thing that can happen, and can you live with it? And more times than not, the downside isn't that great. And we should let go of those decisions so that we can focus on the other four parts of this model. And so if you struggle with delegation, it's just something to think about.
Well, that comes up a lot. We always ask, we do a lot of 5 levels of leadership workshops and things, and it comes up about, are you doing the things that only you can do?
Yeah.
And are you delegating the other? And John Maxwell talks quite a bit about,
yes,
if somebody can do it 80% as well as you delegate, let it go. But almost every leader says, delegating, that's big. I said, how are you? Not very good.
Right.
Why? And it usually comes down to, I don't trust I can do it as well as I can. I just love what you just said. So what's the worst that can, say it again, what the worst that can happen?
And can I live with it? Or can the company live with it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I am so glad you brought that point. And you're right, John has talked about that every day when I went into work at SeaWorld and it was such a mess, I asked John's question: what are the things that only I can do? And that is a great question also for delegation. And when you get down to that, and sometimes we don't want to go there because we're uncomfortable with those things, even though they're the things that only I can do. They're very uncomfortable, and so you tend to go back to what you know and what you're comfortable with. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's a very important point.
Yeah,
delegation.
Hey, podcast listeners, do you have a clear plan for growth? Achieving big results most often does not require big life changes. Small improvements over time compound into big results. Download the Maxwell Leadership app. It's the new free app where our expert guides and John Maxwell help you pace your leadership journey and set a clear plan for your own personal growth. You can also find all sorts of resources on the Maxwell Leadership app, including this podcast, information on upcoming events, and much more. Just search Maxwell Leadership in your app store and download the app today.
All right. Well, number 4 on your list, before I go to number 4, it was interesting you said it's in the middle, manage the business. And when you look at it, it's almost the sandwich effect. You got the 2 heavy that you said are people oriented on the top 1 and 2, and on the bottom, 4 and 5 about yourself, about other people. It's about the people side of things. This is as well about managed business. There's some delegating, all that stuff. But it's interesting how you put it right in the middle. You probably intentionally did that.
I did.
And I just kind of realized it now. For all the times I've heard you talk about this, I hadn't really put it together just now. It's like, it's interesting that it's sitting right there in the middle between those 2 pivotal parts of, remember what we're talking about here. So we're talking about how do great leaders spend their time.
Right.
And you kind of put it right there in the middle. So I was just thought about that. I had a little aha moment as we were going through this.
And yet sometimes people think it should be first, because that's what everyone thinks of as leadership is like, well, I just got to run the business.
Yeah.
not to be a great leader, you have to do the other
Yeah,
things.
love it. And so many people aren't getting that right. That's why it's the number one question that you're getting through the executive circle. So, all right, well, the fourth one is making others successful. So as we move back into this, the people side of the five things, most leaders, one of the things we talk about in the 5 levels of leadership is that level 4 is when you begin to develop other people. They look at you as someone that's adding value to them, and you become a people developer. You're reproducing yourself. One of the things that really pains us in all the work that we do around the world is there seems to be a lid at level 3. People understand their job and their role. They understand they got to connect with people. They have to manage a business, KPIs, and then it just stops. They don't get this next part of what you're talking about right here, which is, hey, we have to invest in, raise up, and develop and empower other people and make them successful.
Yeah.
You know, John wrote a book called The Leader's Greatest Return. People are like, where's the financials for this greatest return, right? And you're missing the point. It has nothing to do about the financial return. It has to do with exactly what you're talking about here, which is making others successful.
And it is one of John's mantras, and he's taught it for so long.
Yeah.
And he's dead on right, because you're right. Most people hit a ceiling here. And there's been a lot written about how to make others successful, but I think the obvious is put people where they're passionate, put people where they have energy. That is intuitive. I think why so many people fail, though, it's the soft side that is challenging, and we have to have really tough conversations. And with remote work, it makes it even harder, because it's tough to have a tough conversation over the phone.
On a screen or on the phone.
But and these things that I see, first of all, a lack of clarity. People aren't clear what they're supposed to do, and the leader has to make sure there's clarity. Another thing is a lack of trust. If you can feel it and see it, but somehow that leader needs to develop trust. Another one is micromanaging. Like, sometimes we see leaders micromanaging and we don't want to call them out on it, but they're losing good people because they're micromanaging. And I know these are negative things, quote unquote, but this is where I see most leaders fail to have those tough conversations, or somebody doesn't like conflict. And they see conflict between their employees, and they're not addressing that conflict. And so I think to go to that next level, I do think you have to coach people to be successful, but see the problems and have those difficult conversations with them.
This is I know this question is an entire podcast in itself, but
It really is.
About trust. You said that. I know that most of the leaders, actually all the leaders I've worked with, they're not lying, cheating, and stealing.
No.
So they're not doing the big things. What do you think? And this is what you can make a whole podcast out of this answer, I'm sure. But what are the single thing you see where trust breaks down between a leader and their team when they're not obviously doing anything bad?
Yep.
But what are they doing?
That's a great question, Perry. One thing that pops into mind is when a leader gives an assignment, or he delegates or she delegates, and it's not quite done well. And instead of going back and saying, you really messed this up, here's how I'd like to see it next time, get back on your horse and do it again. Instead of doing that, they divert it to somebody else, or they give the project to somebody else, or they aren't honest and they don't confront conflict. Really good. And then that person loses trust immediately for the leader. And I see that over and over again. That's when I said not managing conflict. It's having that difficult conversation is so important. So that's what comes to mind.
Love that. Number 5, this is going to be huge. Keep yourself healthy. Boy, I love that you have that in there, but please tell me more.
Well, it didn't used to be in there for me. I had this 4-part model for a long time. I added it because my biggest failures in life, both personally and professionally, have come because I didn't keep myself healthy. Wow. And if I can do anything to stop someone else from going through what I went through, whether it's at the turnaround at SeaWorld, I was working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. I hate to admit, but there was a part of my career where drinking was an issue because I was so stressed, and I just needed an out. And I'm not proud of that, but I sought help. But and people who read my book know this. I actually lost my first marriage, which is the biggest, I can hardly talk about it. It's the biggest failure of my life. And, I hate divorce. I hate that it happened. But it was because I didn't stay healthy. I didn't watch out for the red flags. And so my big advice to people is, get rest, look for the red flags. And if you're too stressed and you go to bad behavior, whatever that dysfunctional behavior is, get help. Get help now before it's too late. And we as leaders, even just getting rest, a great leader has to be rested. An unrested leader will not be a great leader. So even if it's just getting that, which is much lighter, it's still very, very important.
Yeah, I appreciate the transparency and the heart behind that. Yes. And, it makes me think about this last one that you added. Now that you're on the other side of this intense leadership journey, you're still leading in many different ways, but you're calling out saying, hey, I got to lead myself first. And
right.
And John has always taught us we're the hardest person to lead, right? Like I got all kinds of excuses and things. And I think, man, if you are listening to this podcast and you go, man, that's me. This guy right here has a heart to serve and add value to you. That's why he's one of our thought leaders. He has our DNA in and through him and leading at the highest level. And so that last message was worth the entire podcast for me. And so I hope it was for you as well. The 5 things real quick, I'll just kind of recap as I wrap up today, and I'll let Perry close us, is remember, Perry made a statement that he's heard. What are the things as a leader that only you can be doing for the organization?
Right.
And begin evaluating that. Begin writing that down. And don't be so prideful that the list is 427 things, right? Like, because it's really probably only about 3 or 4 things. And so in these 5 parts, I think as you think through that, you can look at each one of these and what is it in that area. And so Joel shared with us, make sure you're sharing the vision and the strategy with your organization. Or if you're a leader, it's your team, right? And how you tie that to the bigger vision of the company and then down even into the individual roles. Live out the values. Your team sees you. They're watching you all the time. They're aware of that. The organization sees you. Manage the business, make others successful, and keep yourself healthy. All right, let's move on to what could be our most passionate discussion in regards to when you and I are having this conversation. So John talks about in point 4 that you have to exude passion as well as purpose. We talked about you got to do it in a way of being very authentic to how you're wired. And yet at the same point in time, you got to manage that a little bit because some of us may come across with a little bit of too much passion. Talk about when you hear John teach this principle, you teach with passion. It's in you, right? And I think it's in you because you're a product of the product you believe. John talks about it here in these last 4 points of point number 4. Everything there aligns directly with where you're at as a leader. Talk a little bit about how you manage that passion of yours when you're teaching and facilitating content with people in our teams.
Well, number one, let me say this. You asked, what did I think or how did I feel when John was teaching that? I went, yes, touchdown.
That's right.
In fact, I thought about 3 recent occasions that John has told me to modify my tempo and emotion from stage to be a little bit more effective. And I thought about capturing my notes for all of you on watching on YouTube. I print out the notes at the bonus resource section as well. And so I thought I've circled it because I've got to go show John that I still can be passionate.
That's right.
So number one, the first thing I did was like, yes, it's my best birthday present ever. But I'll tell you this. I still stand by what I told you right before we started recording after we listened to John. As a highly passionate person, you do the values card exercise with clients all over. When I did that, one of my top 5 values is passion. Growth is another one. Passion is everything to me. Mm-hmm. If I can't get excited about it, nobody wants to be around me. Trust me, I'm a boring person. But if I can get excited about what I'm doing, it overcomes me. Well, what that means is when I'm passionate about something that we need to do and we're not measuring up, we're coming up short. Something happens. Something's a distraction. My passion is portrayed as intensity. And we had Liz Wiseman on here this year, and Liz talks about the book Maximizer, about a passion that can also be a minimizer, or a maximizer's strength can be a minimizer liability. And that's certainly true for me under passion. I've had people that worked alongside me. Nobody works for me, but worked alongside me for 10 years, 15 years, that I'll get passionate about something. It comes across to them as intensity, and they'll go, "Is something wrong with me? Are you mad at me? Is something?" I'm going, "Have we not worked long enough together that you know I would tell you if I'm displeased, if I'm frustrated? No, I got to get there." Even those closest to you can misread passion if you're not aware of your audience. That's why John says great teachers exude passion as well as purpose. Right. And there's sometimes that I really am frustrated with where we are. Because my passion is so strong, if I don't give purpose to the frustration, if I don't slow down and give context to why my frustration is there, it will be received as displeasure, as demeaning, as unhappy, as
you name it,
terminal,
negative,
everything that you can imagine if I don't slow down and couple my passion with purpose. So when I am frustrated, I always tell myself, Mark, give context on why this is frustrating. It's slower for some. I've seen some people go, "Oh my gosh, can you get to the point? I already know there's a hammer coming, but can you get to the point?" And I always have to discipline myself. Slow your passion down in moments of frustration or shortfall and give context before you emulate passion, because it'll be taken as intensity. I love my passion. I wouldn't trade anything for it. I love it. I love growth. That's another high value of mine. I wouldn't trade those things. They are the things that make me unique. Mm-hmm. But being wise with those are a difference maker in the 2 points today. Point number 1, create a safe environment. Point number 2, do it with purpose. Don't just be passionate without purpose, because then you're just a fanatic. And we all know what fans are, right? They're fanatics with no sense of reality. And so I don't want to have no sense of reality in the things that I am passionate about, because then I become a fanatic.
Yeah. I think, and I knew exactly almost every word that you were going to just, we've worked together for a long time. And I think there's also the other side of that. As we're kind of wrapping up, I want to talk about the other side of it, because people hear about your passion all the time. And one of the things that we're learning in organizational development and the companies we're working with is that one of the probably top 4 reasons people stay at organizations or join organizations is because there's meaningful work, right? Yeah. And with that is the purpose side of things. And so what I want to just challenge our listeners or our viewers that are joining us today is that maybe you feel like you're not as passionate. That would be me, right? I communicate in a different way. I don't have as much passion as Mark does, but the purpose, we are directly aligned in the purpose of what we do. So at times I've got to recognize that, and I have to ramp up my passion so that it communicates everything that John talks about here in these 4 points at the bottom, right? Do I believe it? 100%. Has it changed me? Yes. Do I believe it will change others? Absolutely. And have I seen it change others every single day in what we get to do? And if that's the case, then I got to up my passion a little bit so that it aligns with how big the purpose is. And oh, by the way, we want our team or those that we're facilitating content or leading and teaching, we want them to buy in and understand we have meaningful work. It's got to come from us. And so there's an other side of that I just wanted to share with you in regards to that, because you're always very vulnerable and sharing kind of where you're at. But also there's another side to that, and I want our listeners to be aware of that, because you have to manage that. It's got to be a balance.
You do. It's why charismatic leaders, we've heard of the charisma of a leader. The charismatic leader draws people in and challenges them and inspires them, and they get to moving. And you've got to have the purpose behind the charisma. But let me tell you this, you've got to have charisma behind the purpose too, which is what you're saying.
Yes.
And so a great charismatic leader a lot of times fizzles out, because they're just up for the hype. They're just up for the moment. They're just up for the excitement. And then the purpose does not sustain them beyond the inspiration. It doesn't sustain them through a change, through something difficult. Yet at the same time, I'm glad you brought this up. I've seen a lot of people with great purpose not able to mobilize anybody because they can't find within them the charisma, the passion, the ability to draw people in to their purpose. And I would challenge you, I would challenge all of our podcast listeners to not call passion a personality trait. Don't say I'm introverted, I don't show my passion. No, that's an excuse because you are passionate. Just maybe you're passionate about your alone time. Maybe you're passionate about just having some me time with your family or not even with your family. You get passionate. Find within you, and John's given us great places to find the process of building fire and building passion. You said it, but let me say it again. Do I believe it? Is it core to who I am? Has it changed me? Truly has it changed you? And don't just answer that with a quick check. How? How did it change you? Because when you find the how it changed you, you'll find the way to passionately communicate the impact of it. So I love this question. I'm not taking away from John at all. Has it changed you? But go just one step further.
That's good.
How? And when you realize that how, now I can stand in front of people and talk about how this has made a difference in my life. Do I believe it will change others? Was it just a personal thing? Or were you giving this opportunity or this change for the benefit of others? And then finally, have I seen it change others? And when I can see the multiplier effect of change that happened in my life first and then others, it truly is fuel to me. I'm ready to go challenge some of the people with it.
What I love about this and what you were just talking about is when you go through and really answer these 4 questions, and to your point, go deep on each one of the questions, out of that is going to come the authentic reason and your authentic passion and your authentic purpose. Because if you dig into these, it's going to give you real life examples. I'm throw it back to you to let you close up. There's one quote I want to share. This 2-part lesson that Mark and I covered for you. Great leaders are great teachers. What a great lesson it was from John. And I saw this quote that I just want to share as we kind of wrap up and throw it back to you. It was by Jack Welch. And he said, as a leader, you have to have a teachable point of view. You have to have one. So we're talking about passion.
Yeah.
What a great quote to kind of wrap up with saying, you've got to have a point of view. You have to have something you're willing to come and teach. And when you do that, all 4 points that John gave us over these 2 lessons will absolutely just come out of you. They'll live out authentically as you lead your team or communicate to your team.
Yeah, we talked about this on both lessons, and I'm going to bring it back up here because I'll put it in the show notes. But we talked about this idea of facilitating. Of really, and I know it's great leaders are great teachers, but it could have been great leaders are great facilitators because so much of what we do is visible. So much of the change that we have in others is a visual implication or a visual opportunity for people to see that change. And so for all of us that are wanting to better our game, better our leadership game, better our teaching game, better our facilitating lane, get into a community, get into a disciplined approach. And as we kind of launch into 2023, my challenge to all of us is to learn to be a better teacher. Now, you can call that a coach, you can call that a communicator, you can call that a facilitator, but be a better demonstrator of what works.
Another one that Dad taught me was that not to give up and not to give in. My father said, I have never known a successful man who quit his way to the top. I love that. And when I think of my father's perseverance, my father, as I've taught in another lesson, was very consistent. My father was very focused. As I just taught a moment ago, my father prioritized well. My dad had no quit in him. He didn't. What he set his mind to do, he stayed right on track. And it was something that I watched in him, and it's something that I admired, because what happened is, because he had no quit in him, I watched my father handle difficult days and adversity in a very successful way. And what that did for me is when I began to be, as a leader, hit with the tough times, the one thing that never entered my mind was to quit. It entered my mind that I ought to create and find a better way. Maybe it entered my mind that I needed to have some people come alongside and help me so that we could maybe together get through a dark time. Maybe it entered my mind that I needed to ask some questions so that I could better be ready to stay in the game. But it never entered my mind to quit. Why? Because I never saw my father quit. I saw my father understand that at the end of the day, the person that wins is the one that stays in the game. Now, that had such an impression on me as a kid. Now you have to go back to 1972, 73. Now I'm pastor. I'm doing pretty well, and I'm still living out the lessons that Dad taught me and was teaching me at that time. And I'll never forget, I got into a real tough stretch at my congregation, and to be honest with you, it was wearing me out. And I, for the first time, I was 28. For the first time, I thought, maybe I ought to quit. Maybe I ought to just let this one go. And then I remembered my dad and his example. One of his favorite expressions is just keep on keeping on, son. Keep on keeping on. There was no quitting, keep on keeping on, that's for sure. And so I can still remember the day in my office, I picked up the old thick Webster's Dictionary. Now you can talk about, hey, those were the days. Hey, remember the days when you had encyclopedias? Remember the days we didn't have all this technology and all the wonderful advances we have today? So I took my old Webster Dictionary and I went to the Q section and I got to the word quit. And I took my scissors and I cut it out of the dictionary. I literally, in fact, I don't have that old dictionary today, obviously, but boy, I wish I did. In fact, I'd bring show and tell and I'd show you, because at the age of what would have been the age of about 27, 28, I just cut the word out of the dictionary and I just basically didn't even recognize it as a worthwhile word. Where did I get that? From my dad. He was a 100%er. No quit in him. When everybody else was kind of considering it, my dad was head on, game on, staying right with the task. That is a tremendous lesson that I have in my life today, because leadership gets very difficult and there are times when you just say, wow, I'm worn out. Now, my father did teach me to take a break. He did teach me to rest. He did teach me that sometimes you got to back off enough to kind of refuel and renourish yourself. But there was no quit in him.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.